All right, welcome everyone. This is the 21st episode of the Do No Evil, Speak No Evil show, where I interview awesome individuals making a positive local impact. I'm your host, Blair Neher, aka the Chief Primate. Today my guest is Cathy Plageman. Cathy is the program director for Read to Them. Read to Them is a nonprofit based here in Richmond with a focus on family literacy. So welcome, Cathy.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so let's get into it. Right off the bat, I like to get into people's story, how they got where they are, your passion, and your why.
Okay. Well, the why of what I do is because I'm uniquely situated to help out in this particular area. And the way that it works is that when I graduated from college, I went into retail and I was a buyer for an unnamed department store. And I ended up buying ladies' swimwear. And I'd done it for about 5 years. And one day I just said to myself, you know what? I just don't think I can do this for the rest of my life. I don't think I can make the idea that every woman in the Washington, Baltimore area has the right swimsuit at the right price, my life's work.
Right.
So I really thought about what I could do to make a difference. And I looked around and decided on teaching. So I went back and got a master's in education. Luckily, it was just about the time where they were coming out with one-year masters. And I got a master's in education from Marymount. And I got a job in the Fairfax County Schools teaching first grade. And I loved it.
Oh, wow.
It was fantastic. It was the perfect change for me. And it was a place that I could make a difference and do something positive for these kids and their families.
Nice.
So I did that for a while. Then I stopped and took off some time to raise my family. And I wanted to get back into doing some things after my kids were grown. And I was just kind of looking around, deciding what to do. And a friend of mine dragged me to an open house at Read to Them and said, oh, you were a teacher. You'd love this. Come on. And I showed up at the offices that we were opening, our old offices downtown, at this open house. And I saw the video and I talked to the people and it just hit me right between the eyes. And I thought, this is it. This is where I can take my background in business and my background in education and put it together and really help out. So I started off as a volunteer and I was doing bits and pieces of things and slowly worked my way into part-time work. And now I'm full-time.
Nice. Yeah. Awesome. So talk a little bit about your time as a teacher. There's a clear and obvious problem in this country with how teachers are paid, how they're reimbursed, and how they're treated. And I was just reading recently about a tax law that only lets teachers deduct $250 of the money out of their own pocket that they spend for school supplies, while a business like mine can spend as much money as I can, afford and write it all off. So that's just one example. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, I guess the people who put that law together seem to think that teachers are supplied with everything they need to do their job through the school system, which clearly they aren't, or the teachers wouldn't be out there buying their own supplies. And they do it as self-preservation. It makes your day in the classroom so much easier if you have all the supplies that you need, if all your children have pencils, if all your children have paper or notebooks or other teaching aids that they need. It makes it so much easier to do your own job. So really, it ends up being to help yourself do the job to your best ability. And it is, teachers are better prepared, better educated, more devoted than they've ever been before, but they aren't getting the respect that, and of course we all read about other countries like Finland and Norway, the Scandinavian and European countries that really value their teachers so much more and pay them in appropriate ways. When I was a teacher, I would go out and buy my own supplies, and like I said, it was just because I wanted to, and it made life easier for me. I spent a great deal of money at the teacher store.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Well, and it's the results are not that impressive with how our students stack up against students across the world, and the standardized testing and all the focus on that. There's a lot of disruption right now, it seems, in this field.
And there needs to be.
And there's teachers protesting. Entire school systems are protesting.
West Virginia right now, right?
And it happened here. And the other kind of, I don't want to say dichotomy, but the other kind of dual problem is the lower income the school district or school itself is, the more the teacher needs to help provide for a lot of students who aren't going to have pens, pencils, and everything they need, and may not want them. But it seems like the lower economy, the school, the bigger of a problem it is, because I'm sure the teachers aren't making as much there as they would in a prestigious county or part of the county. Mm-hmm. And it just seems like it's a very tough situation for teachers.
Well, what I really see right now, and one of the main things we try to address at Read to Them, is the disconnect between the school and the family. And that really, especially in those lower income families, is the thing that you can't go to the teacher store and buy. You can't solve that with any amount of money on your end. Think about when you went back to when you were in school a long time ago, and how involved your parents were in your schooling, and how they knew what you were doing, and they were watching over you doing your homework. And now families don't feel as connected to the schools. A lot of things are dropped at the school's doorstep. You do this, that, and the other for us. We're not going to do that as a family anymore. And the families don't feel as connected to the schools, so they don't. The children don't feel as supported at home. And this isn't because the families don't want to. It's because, for one thing, they can't. They're really busy. They are trying to hold down multiple jobs. They're trying to get all the kids going and doing different things. Some of them, especially the lower income schools we work with, don't speak English, so it's a giant struggle for them to communicate with the schools and figure out what's going on.
Wow.
And then, so they feel disconnected in that way. So that's one of the reasons, one of the things we'll get into later with what we do at Read to Them, is to try to connect the school and the families back together.
And that's probably a great segue right into Read to Them. So let's talk about exactly what Read to Them is, what they do, how it started, and kind of where we are right now.
Okay. Well, our mission is to create a culture of literacy in every home. And we do that through our One School, One Book flagship program. So this started actually at Fox Elementary, right here in the Fan District in Richmond.
Okay.
Many years ago, one of the dads at Fox was tasked with building a community building event for Fox Elementary. So he came up with the idea of a whole school book club. So when he means whole school, he means not only the children, but their families. Also, all the teachers, the staff, and that includes custodians, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, everybody
Can you
in the
imagine
school.
That first custodian? I got to do what?
Yeah, exactly. And it turns out those are the folks that get the most excited about it. The kids jump on the school bus in the morning, and the school bus driver will say, because it helps him keep the peace on the school bus. If all the kids are connected to him, then they're not going to act up on the school bus because they think the school bus driver's a nice guy and he reads the same book as they do. Or they're going to clean up in their classroom because they don't want to make a mess for that nice custodian who's reading the same book as they are.
Oh,
so
wow.
It just creates these great community connections.
That's great.
So it starts with the school, and all the families have something to talk about. When they run into each other on the soccer field or at the grocery store or at a neighborhood party, they've all read the same book. So they all have something to talk about, and they all have something positive to talk about. So then it went from Fox Elementary, it started to spread across the country, and it spread all across the United States. And we have schools now in 48 states that are using our program.
Wow.
And it went so well over time that we decided, all right, let's try a whole school district. So our first district was Bentonville, Arkansas. And I can't even tell you how we ended up in Bentonville. That's a story that's lost in the midst of time. But it's the home of Walmart. And they have more money than they know what to do with in Bentonville. So they could take our program and they could do it to the nines. They could have all kinds of exciting bells and whistles around our program. Usually we get excited if there's a bouncy house in the parking lot at the end as a celebration. They had a black tie gala at the museum with the symphony playing.
Oh, wow.
So it was a big hit in Bentonville, where we got the whole entire district of Bentonville reading together. And then it really crosses over, because then you get businesses involved that are around town. And we've had Rotaries and school boards and Kiwanis clubs and WISE and all kinds of different community organizations also get in on the fun. So it becomes even more magical the more schools that are involved.
Nice. And so 48 states, that's a lot. And how many of the whole school district programs are there?
Oh gosh, I can't even count those up.
Oh, really?
I'm going to guess in the 50s probably. Mostly it's individual schools that do it. But then what we did after we figured out that a district worked well is we thought, well, let's try a state. So we ended up backing into a cool relationship with Jason Garrett, the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. His wife was friends with a librarian at one of the schools in Dallas, and he was reading the first chapter of a book aloud for them, and he agreed to do that for us, for any school in the state of Texas that signed up. So we ended up 5 years ago starting Texas Reads One Book. Of course, we did not get the whole state. Texas, as we found out, is massive. But we do have,
super big.
at this point, about 50,000 kids across Texas reading together at the same time. And Jason's been reading with us for 5 years now.
So talk about that a little bit. Celebrities and community people. How you say they read a chapter. Is that like a kickoff event, or is that something that happens regularly? How does that work?
Well, they'll read it aloud on videotape, and then the schools can use it at their kickoff event. So some schools have their kickoff event during the day, and all the kids gather in the auditorium, or sometimes they have it at night and invite the whole family. And the whole family comes decked out in their cowboy wear, and they show the video, and the dads and the little boys especially get really excited about a football player, and the little guys are our toughest ones to get involved in reading. So
I bet
that's a big hit. So Coach Garrett is our big hero in Texas for doing that for us.
And do you try to normally get a local celebrity or somebody like that to kick it off in a program that big?
We do. We actually moved the program then to Arkansas. So the superintendent at the Bentonville schools was actually hired by the Little Rock schools because the schools were struggling so mightily there that they needed some help. So they went into receivership with the state. The state pulled in this wonderful superintendent, and he took us with him to Little Rock to help shore up the schools there. So now Little Rock actually reads 2 titles with us, one in the fall and one in the spring.
Oh, wow.
And they're one of only 12 school districts in the state out of over 200 districts that are improving in every category. So we're very proud of what we're doing in Arkansas. And they actually got the governor, Asa Hutchinson, and his first lady to read the first chapter aloud for them. They got the a bunch of local, of course in Arkansas football is a very big deal, so they got a bunch of local football coaches and quarterbacks to read for them. And we have forged a relationship with the Washington Redskins Charitable Foundation, and they provide a mystery reader for us for our, drumroll please, Virginia Reads One book, which is opening next week.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's the big program right here in town or right here in the state is a Virginia Reads. Oh, I'm sorry. Say it
You're
again.
getting it just right. Virginia Reads One book, and it is statewide, but it also dovetails in with One Richmond One book, which is what's happening locally here. And yes, that is kicking off next Friday on March 1st. So every single child in the city of Richmond elementary schools, all 13,000 plus of them, over 26 schools, will receive a copy of Cleo Edison Oliver. So back in the fall, they read Humphrey. They read Humphrey, Friendship According to Humphrey. He's our friend, the hamster, which was also available in Spanish because a lot of our school children, their family's first language is Spanish. So we struggle to find books that are appropriate for the kids that are available in Spanish, and when we do, we make the most of them. So right now, across the whole state, Virginia Reads One book. We'll be reading Cleo as an opt-in program, but then we at Read to Them committed to funding the entire program for the City of Richmond schools.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how does the funding work, and how does the who's providing the books and printing, and are you working with publishing companies that are involved somehow, or do you have to pay retail for all this stuff?
No, we do not have to pay retail, thank goodness. So we offer this program normally at a price of just $5.95 per student, which is less than the cost of the book at retail. And they get with that not only a book for every family or every student, even if there are multiple children in the same family, they each get their own book. We provide free books for all the faculty and staff and bus drivers and custodians and all that because we really want them to be reading along. Mm-hmm. We also send along posters and bookmarks and stickers so that the kids have some swag to go along with the book and posters to put up either in the schools or around town. But most importantly, what we send is a whole curriculum package to go around the book. So it includes ideas for kickoff assemblies. We don't always have a mystery reader for every book. We have over 175 books that all the schools can choose from if they're not doing one of our set reads. So we have opening assembly ideas. We have activities across the curriculum, not just in language arts, but math, science, PE, art, music. So all the teachers can be involved during the school day, much more than they could ever do. They pick and choose from what we send them because it's a huge package. And there's a trivia question every day that gets read over the loudspeaker in the morning. So when they come on with morning announcements and the weather and what's happening that day and what's for lunch, they ask a trivia question that has to do with the chapter that was read the night before. So the kids take the book home and read it one chapter a night. We send home a reading schedule and a letter and some reading tips for the parents so they understand completely what's going on. And they read it one chapter a night. So on Tuesday morning, they'll ask a trivia question about what the kids were reading on Monday night. And either individually or as a class or as a grade, they can try to come up with the answer to the trivia question. That just creates a ton of excitement around the school.
So it's a whole program, not just the book.
Exactly. And back to the printing and the publishing and the nuts and bolts of it is we work very closely with the publishers, and they give us a substantial discount because they realize that we are providing fertile ground for their businesses in the future. And if we're not creating readers for them, there's going to be no one to buy their books in the future. So they're very generous with us and very, I just put in an order today for 50,000 books for Texas. So it's gotten to be pretty large scale. So they listen to us now. In fact, they translated Penguin translated Humphrey into Spanish just for us, just so we could use it for the Richmond and the Texas schools.
Well, even with small margins, an order of 50,000 is a huge order.
We get really excited about that.
Yeah, and I'm sure they do too. Even though it's I'm sure they're hooking you guys up, but that's still, you guys are pushing numbers, so to speak.
So it ends up being less expensive for the schools to buy the books through us, and then they get all of the curriculum materials with it. So we don't consider ourselves booksellers. We consider ourselves program directors, and we hook them up with these programs that the book is part of the deal, but it's really not nearly all of it. It's really the programming that makes it sing.
Okay, and so that's something that the school pays for, not the families and not the students.
Every once in a while, schools are allowed to ask the families, but most of the time the schools are not allowed to ask the families, so they raise the money on their own. PTAs will kick in for this because it's a family reading event. Mm-hmm. So they understand that getting all the families involved is really in the best interest. So sometimes PTAs will pay for it. Sometimes principals or superintendents will find it stretching those budgets, those tiny budgets that they have that are already stretched. We get a lot of money from Title I. So Title I is the federal money that is set aside to go to the school districts. Schools are all run by the states, but the federal government sets aside money to go to the schools that are the most underprivileged.
Okay.
So when you hear about programs like free and reduced lunch, Head Start, preschool programs, that's all funded by Title I money. There's more money set aside in Title I budgets for family engagement, and we fit right into that category.
I gotcha. So that's smart.
Schools can often use part of their Title I budget to fund our programming. So normally that's what happens. But in order to fund the City of Richmond schools, we realized we need to go out and knock on some doors as well. So in addition to being a program director, I've also taken on the Director of Development hat, and I've been out begging for all the really lovely, generous folks in Richmond and in Virginia who have taken care of us. So part of Cleo Edison Oliver is that it has family financial literacy involved. So the Virginia Bankers Association has partnered with us. They give us a very substantial grant, and then they also market out to all the banks in the state. So different banks around the state, Chesapeake Bank, Fulton Bank here in Richmond, and then other ones, Fauquier, Botetourt, Skyline, Paladashel Bank, I can't even name them all. They are sponsoring schools within their banking footprint and all across the state, and helping them have access to this family and financial literacy program.
Nice. So talk a little bit about some of the results you've seen, whether it's a story about a family or a kid, or what are some of the success stories that you guys have seen that are memorable?
Okay, so there's sort of two categories that lands into, and the first one is the hard numbers that we're looking at to see if reading scores are going up, to see if kids are better prepared to leave elementary school and go on to read for content later on. Third grade is sort of the dividing line. Up until third grade, you learn to read, and from third grade on, you read to learn. So if you're not on grade level by third grade, it's not impossible, but it's very expensive, very difficult to get kids back on grade level. So we're trying to get them ahead of time before they fall off what we call the third grade slide out.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So part of what we're looking at is hard reading scores, and we want to see those kids making leaps, and we've seen that in Little Rock, and that's one of the reasons why we really wanted to be in Richmond. Is there are a lot of similarities between Richmond and Little Rock, demographically, size-wise, income-wise, racially, reading score-wise. Both march along hand in hand in those ways. So we're hoping that by being in the Richmond schools, we're going to help out with those metrics, getting the kids reading on grade level. Interestingly, we also find out that absences and tardies go down during the 3 weeks of our program, because those kids get on their caregivers and they say, I've got to get to school on time because I got to answer the trivia question in the morning. So that's one part of it. Then the other part of it is the community building and the families and the schools coming together and having something positive to talk about. And we have the most lovely stories that people send to us about kids and families and educators coming together and really enjoying this. And funny ones like the fourth grader who said, you know how good this book is? We even turn the TV off when we're reading this book. I love that one.
That's a big thing for a family in this day and age.
Exactly. And then there's the one from the dad who said, thank you so much, you gave me my family back.
Wow.
And if that doesn't melt your heart, I don't know what will. And then educators who will have a family literacy night, and they'll have hundreds of families show up, and they'll say, wow, we used to struggle to get maybe a dozen families to show up, but because of this book, everybody had something to get excited about, and they came, and we all got together for family literacy night. So it brings that community closer together.
Talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, I'm very bossy today.
Usually that's me.
a bit about the kind of the digital age we're in,
Mm-hmm.
and the importance of picking up a physical book and reading it, and like you said, turning the TV off,
Mm-hmm.
putting the phones down. And I know a lot of these underserved communities, the kids probably don't have phones, but man, there's a lot of kids that have phones at a very young age, and you wonder about the impacts of that and them never picking up a book. So what is your take on that, and how important picking up a physical book is?
Well, it'll be interesting to see. All that remains to be seen, because we're literally guinea pigging on this generation of kids to see what's gonna happen with them. We have had schools ask us for ebooks, and we haven't gone there yet. And there's some school systems who literally only use ebooks, which I think is interesting. And I wonder if that's a harbinger of what's going to happen in the future. It's not very many, but it's a few. But I don't see families gathering around the Kindle. What we want is for the kids, everybody to get into mom and dad's bed, or get on the sofa with grandma, or get down on the playroom floor with the neighbor's mom or whoever, and all look at the book together and read along. So really for us, it's all about the story and all about the togetherness. If it turns out that that's all going to be digital in the future and it's not going to be a paper book, maybe that's going to be the way it is. But right now, it's getting together around the story, not an individual device. When you're on your own phone playing your own Candy Crush, or your own or reading a book on your own, it's all about that togetherness.
Okay.
So
yeah, you just see studies and see of the damage that phones are doing, and I know it's definitely a generational thing where the older generation's like, you guys got to put down those phones. And it's, the younger generation, my son is all about it. He's just buried in his damn phone.
How old is he now?
He's 17.
Oh, yeah.
with a girlfriend. So
yeah, but that might be okay for a 17-year-old boy, man. You might be lucking out.
He's not in trouble.
Exactly. Or he's not like giving you the eye roll and the chin jerk and whatever. That's 17-year-old girls.
I've been through that with my daughter too. Thank goodness there wasn't any the same technology then. So your upcoming program, we're going to get in a little bit later about volunteer opportunities, but what can people do for your right here in town? Because that's who probably most of our listeners are. What can they do for this program coming up?
Well, right now, a lot of it's just about exposure, just knowing that it's happening. For the longest time, we were in our offices and we were sending out our program across the United States, and it really didn't matter that people knew where we were or what we were doing, because we weren't really in their community. But now that we are more active in Richmond and Virginia, we just want to get the word out that we're here. So one of the things that Penguin did back when we did Humphrey in the fall is they bought bus placards for us. And they were giant placards of Humphrey riding around town on 16 city buses. So just knowing that we're out here, people like you and Synapse, and getting the word out that we are here and that we are committed to the children of Richmond for the foreseeable future. We hope that this program will run year after year after year, and that we will be able to find the funding to make sure that it happens for these kids.
Is this something you're trying to do twice a year, in the fall and in the spring?
Yes, exactly. Every year we'll have a fall book, we'll have a spring book, and then there's actually a Superstar Summer Readers program where we give each of the kids a book to take home over the summer as well, to make sure we keep them reading over the summertime.
Interesting. That's awesome. So what do you guys? Well, let me rephrase that. What is the future goal or the end game? If there is an end game for Read to Them, or what's the next big goal for Read to Them?
As with any nonprofit, our end goal is to put ourselves out of business. we want there to be no reason for us to exist.
Absolutely.
We want everyone to be out there, reading as a family on their own. But shorter term than that, which is everything, we just want to keep growing and expanding and making sure that we can get our programs to as many children and their families as possible. And we really could perk along with our sales model and do that. But what we found is that we weren't reaching the kids that we really needed and wanted to reach. We were reaching the kids that could afford it. Well, they were reading with their families pretty much anyway. We were helping. We were adding to what they were doing. But we really want to get to those families that aren't reading together at all. And those are in those lower income schools that cannot afford us. So that's why we started fundraising, to make sure that we could at least get our program in as many of the schools as we could.
Awesome.
That we wanted to.
Awesome. So let's reel back a little bit. I kind of skipped over this because we got right into the read of them. Mm-hmm. Tell me about, this is only for you personally, tell me about beekeeping, because that interests me terribly. I have land that I will eventually move to, and I definitely want to have bees. I have chickens right now, mm-hmm. and all about that as well. And I should have brought you some eggs, so I apologize.
I should have brought you some honey.
We'll make a trade next time. I will definitely take some real honey. So tell me about that experience.
Beekeeping is a blast, and the more time I spend doing it, the more amazed I am with bees and how incredibly cool they are. So I just got started. I did raise chickens and all kinds of other things. And the funny thing is, you say you're moving out to land. You don't need land at all to raise bees. You need much smaller than this table. You just need a spot where you can put a hive that faces east. They like the morning sun, and have a little bit of wind barrier around their hive just so they don't get too cold in the winter. And you can have them anywhere. You can have them their rooftop. I think the Jefferson has some on their rooftop, and some other bars. I had some just in my side yard in my little suburban home. So they're right there because they fly out from the bottom and up and out, and they fly up to 3 miles a day to find what they need. So you don't have to have it right there for them. You don't have to have fields of flowers or anything.
Okay.
They go out. In fact, my neighbors would make me laugh. They'd say, "Oh, Cathy, I saw your bees in my garden today." I'd say, "Oh, did you see the little brand on their backside that I put on them?" Like, how did you know it was my bee? But I got credit for all the bees that were there. But they're just amazing. Like I said, they fly miles and miles every day to get the pollen and the nectar and the water that they need. And then this is probably more than you want to know, but they come back into the hive, and you have to remember, inside the hive, it's dark. It's pitch black dark. They come in from the bottom and they go up into the honeycomb, and they can't see anything. But then they communicate with their friends. There's a little bee dance that they do, and they not only tell them what direction the nectar is in, but how far away it is. And they do it using, this is crazy, they triangulate off of where the sun is. So they're doing trig inside the beehive. And not only that, the sun moves during the day. So where the sun was when they were 3 miles away is not where the sun was when they come back hours later. And they're telling their friends all about it. They do a little figure 8 dance inside the hive. And the other thing you have to remember is all the honeycomb is going vertically, but of course the earth is going horizontally. So the bees that are watching the dance have to translate it all to a different plane. It's crazy how advanced it is. Did any of that make any sense?
Yeah, it did. My chickens amaze me just how, you watch them and then watch them like eat something or kill something, and they're just little dinosaurs.
Yeah, chickens aren't super smart.
They're extremely smart when it comes to like, hey, something's bad, I'm out. They know how to run.
They know how to run.
Yeah, and they know how to eat.
Find.
They know how to flee.
Bugs.
Yeah, but like, they're just little dinosaurs, which just cracks me up because what happened to the dinosaurs? Oh, they're walking around in my backyard. Yeah. You see them tear up a vole or a mouse. You're like, good grief.
Yeah, survival of the fittest right there in your backyard.
You don't mess around.
Yeah. But anyway, I highly recommend beekeeping. Doesn't take much to get into, and you get stung a little bit. It's okay.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. That never bothered me. I know some people are allergic or freak out about that. But
that is a problem. And there are all kinds of cool beekeeping classes around Richmond. So you can go. I've got a friend who's taking one right now. He's at the library, I think, and it's over a couple. So you can go and see if you like it, and then try it out.
Yeah, I definitely want to have a full garden, but that's, I guess, something I didn't know. I figured you had to have crops or something, within a mile or a half mile or even less. But you said 3 miles a day. That's quite a. But they'll go to the nearest closest
they will.
source.
And if you can. There are people who make honey that is specifically made by bees that they try to keep within. So if you plant a whole bunch of obviously almond trees and you bring them to an almond grove, they're going to have almond tasting honey, or orange blossoms, they'll have orange tasting honey. So if you have a huge orchard and they're right in there, it will taste like that. But you can't control where they go.
Yeah.
Once they're out, they're out.
And trees are fruit trees and whatnot. They're hard.
Oh yeah.
There are a lot of things that want to eat.
Yes.
Eat your fruit.
Yes.
And
it's a jungle out there.
Yeah, I have tons of deer on my land out in Powhatan, and it's got to be.
Oh.
I'd love to have apple trees and stuff like that. I just don't know if I would ever be able to get them going. Anyway, so that I found that very interesting. So kind of shifting back to the nonprofit world. Most of my listeners have heard of Synapse or are a part of Synapse themselves, and I always like to ask a nonprofit when I have them on show about their relationship with Synapse, how that looks from your perspective and how it's helped.
I really stumbled into Synapse. I cannot claim that it was any great effort on my part. I actually ran into Morgan Adams at Bikram Yoga and was telling her about what I do. And she said, oh, you should try out Synapse. And I tried it and was immediately hooked and immediately wanted to become a hub. So I talked to Keith and we started a hub at Read to Them, and we have people coming in every week. And I can't tell you how many cool connections we have made because of Synapse. I mean, here I am sitting here doing this right now.
True.
We also got our grant writer. We got social media. We got, Keith told me about the Community Foundation and their volunteer wrangling that they do on there. They have a whole volunteer clearinghouse, and now we're hooked up with the Community Foundation to get lots of volunteers through them. So just all kinds of ways that we've made. Vicki had me on Front Porch Fridays, Vicki Coleman. We've made a lot of really cool connections, and a bunch of our volunteers have come from Synapse.
Yeah, it's a great community, and I always get to see what happens from the business side, but don't always get to hear the perspective from the nonprofit. So it's interesting. I always try to ask to see, and everybody's kind of has said the same thing. I could probably stop asking that it's awesome, it's beneficial.
Can't say it enough.
Yeah, and it's just such a great model. I'm the biggest Synapse poster boy or one of them when it comes to this stuff. I just think it's a great organization. Keith was one of the first people I had on the show, and he really did put on a clinic on networking when he was on the show. He just didn't talk about Synapse, so that was awesome.
Well, as a nonprofit, there isn't but so much we can offer to Synapse as far as referrals. We can use people just for ourselves, but we can't really refer back and forth like the real estate agents and the insurance people and the mortgage people. So it's been really gratifying to see that we just get because of the neat people that are involved in Synapse, and they all have such big hearts and all want to help, that they just keep giving, knowing they're not going to get anything tangible in return, but they get that great feeling in their heart of doing something good for others.
Well, they don't get a direct benefit, and I can speak personally that every time I do a pro bono website or a pro bono something, that it just comes back tenfold. So
doesn't it? Yep.
It doesn't take very long for people to realize that, hey, if I chip in here, that it's gonna come back to me one way or the other. But you're right. It's in the direct relationship, it's not about the business people that come. It's about supporting the nonprofit, because plenty of business still happens at those meetings.
Oh gosh, lots, just not with me.
Right.
Yeah.
But
lots of business happening.
And it's always, even as a nonprofit resource, it's awesome to have all those people in your pocket. Hey, such and such, I need this kind of person. Oh, well, I know 3.
Gotten so many of those.
Yeah.
Yep.
So those connections are awesome, and that's what it's all about. All right, so here's a big question for you. How can people get involved, or what are all the different ways people can get involved? Read to Them, because you guys have programs going all the time.
Yeah, and thank you for asking, because I would love to answer that question.
Take volunteers. Your time with it too.
We need volunteers. We always, like I said before, would sort of package up our program, put a bow on it, kiss it goodbye, and send it to Wyoming or Minnesota or Hawaii or wherever. But now that we couldn't use but so much volunteer help. We could have people come in the office and help us with clerical things or packing up packages, but there wasn't that much to do. And people would always say to me, oh, you work for Read to Them. I want to read to kids. And I'd be like, I can't help you there because they're all far away. Well,
right.
Now I can, and we need volunteers. So there are 26 Richmond elementary schools that are all going to start reading Cleoetus and Oliver. Either they're kicking off either this Friday or the following Monday, depending on what works better for their schedule. Last time when we did Humphrey, we had, I think, 50, 60 some volunteer asks from the schools. After they had their fall read, this time we have over 200 volunteer asks. So they've realized the power of our volunteers, and they want to bring us in even more. So please, please, please come and volunteer. And that does not mean that you have to read to kids. If you want to read to kids, that's great. And we can do that. We can definitely hook you up reading to kids. You can read to a group. You can read one-on-one. But we also need lots of other things because we're here in Richmond and we're doing all of the volunteering. We need people to tote things back and forth to the schools. We have these giant standees. I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but we made these enormous 8-foot tall cutouts of Mayor Stoney and Superintendent Cameras and the stars of our books, Humphrey, and then we're adding Cleo for the spring. So we need people to take those back and forth. We made one of those for every school, every library. We put one in City Hall. In fact, when we went back to add Cleo on for the spring, we had to find the one in City Hall because Mayor Stoney had hidden it from us. So we wouldn't take it back. He wants to keep it. So, and we made banners for all the schools and libraries, so there's lots of back and forth. We also do a lot of surveying because in order to get the funding from our lovely sponsors, they want to see results. So we have pre and post surveys that we hand out and collect back from all the schools, and we spend a great deal of time tallying up those results and getting some metrics so that we can show to our funders that we are moving the needle and we are making a difference in the schools. We need people to take pictures. We need people to put on skits in the schools. We need people to make bulletin boards. So if you're crafty, but would rather not read to the kids, there's things you can do there. All kinds of volunteer opportunities. We need people who speak Spanish to read to the kids and talk to them about the book in Spanish. So maybe they can talk to them before they read, explain what the chapter is going to be about, and then when the kids hear it in English, they understand better because they've had a little bit of background from this Spanish-speaking tutor. So all kinds of things that can be done. So here's how you can get involved. Go to our website, www.readtothem.org. So just all written out, readtothem.org. Or you can go to the Community Foundation website and click on their Hands-on RVA, and that is their volunteer clearinghouse. And we are the featured volunteer opportunity of the month for March, so that'll come right up. And there are all kinds of different ways that you can indicate that you'd like to be involved. We have a fairly in-depth orientation process that takes place just to make sure that everybody is informed and can do the very best job that they can do. So we have those periodically so that to whatever one fits the schedule, and you do have to have a background check in order to go into the Richmond City Public Schools. And once we get all those boxes checked, then we can start filling opportunities.
Nice. Yeah. And I will definitely put the website URL and the description of the YouTube and in the podcast in the future, where people can do just that. Then go visit.
We had a service member call us up and say, "I'm being deployed on Monday. Can I come by on Friday and help you out?" And he delivered all of those cutout standees for us on a Friday afternoon on his last workday on American soil, and that's what he did for us. It was very moving.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how businesses can get involved. And I know you can sponsor a classroom or what are the different? I think it's classroom and school,
well,
and then
a child. A child. Yeah. So one child for the 3 different programs for the year: the fall read, the spring read, and the summer giveaway is $30 per child. So that comes up to, we average out classrooms at about 20 kids, so it'll be $600 to sponsor an entire classroom. $2,500 would sponsor a whole grade level, and then $15,000 would sponsor an entire school.
Okay.
So, and we have had sponsors at all of those levels step up and help out.
Wow, nice.
But not all of them. There's still some left to there's still some open, so feel free.
Plenty of spots open.
Absolutely.
And what about just straight donations? Is that something you guys take as well?
Absolutely. Right there on our website, www.readtothem.org. Click the donate button. Exactly. And there will be a place for you to donate there. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So here's where I give you a chance to talk about any future events, announcements, shout outs, anything you want. Kind of the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you. So for future events, like I said, we had the fall read, we had the spring read coming up on Friday, and then our Superstar Summer Readers program will take place at the end of the school year, and that doesn't start on a particular date, but it will be when every child in the Richmond City Public Schools, elementary schools, will get a book to take home over this summer. So big shout out to Simon & Schuster Publishers, who donated all of those books for us to give away to the children, which is a huge amount of money. And they shipped them to us, and all we had to do was store them until it was time to give them out. And then another big shout out to Capital One, who has just agreed to pack all of those books into a bag for each of the children, and then cover all the costs of those bags. So we're going to set up big assembly lines during National Volunteer Week on April 9th. We're going to go out to Capital One, and they're going to get their employees at the West Creek campus to set up assembly lines, and they're going to pack 13,000 plus bags for us, and it will have in it a book for each child. It won't be the same book like in the fall and the spring when each child gets the same exact book. They'll get a book according to their grade level. So there's a kindergarten and first grade book, there's a second and third grade book, fourth and fifth grade book, and I say a book, it's lots of different books. So the kids will have lots of different ones, and they can trade them back and forth, which one they like the best. So inside the bag will go the book, a bookmark, a letter home with reading tips for the parents and an explanation of how important it is to read over the summer. We throw in some fruit snacks, and there'll be a pen with a Capital One logo on it for the kids. And they're going to pack them all up and put a sticker on the outside that is color-coded toward the grade level. So when the teachers are passing out the books at school, or volunteers are passing out the books at school, or Capital One employees, they're going to come help as well, they'll be able to pass out the right level book to the right child. So those 3 programs will happen for as long as we can with the Richmond City Public Schools. So we will start again in the fall with another book, again in the spring, again next summer with the book giveaways. So that's going on in Richmond. Then Virginia Reads One Book, of course, is going on all over Virginia. And then we're expanding into lots of other schools in other states. We're actually starting to get state representatives who live in the states. So right now in New York and Michigan, and coming up soon, we think in Mississippi and Florida, we're going to have actual boots on the ground helping us to get in touch with schools, districts, PTAs, funders in those states so that we can really make concentrated efforts in those states.
Wow. And they certainly have enough lab rats out there at Capital One to put to good use. I forgot to ask you about this. Are there any other nonprofits in Synapse that you're working with? You working with
Cobb Imprint?
Imprint.
Yes.
I was just because I'm having Andrea. Andrea.
Yes, Andrea Starr.
Andrea Starr.
Yeah.
I'm having her on the show soon.
Oh,
and so
give her a hug for me. She's
I
wonderful.
was just there, and it just now dawned on me that she talked about doing some joint work with you guys. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, Cobb Imprint does so many wonderful things for children, and they
True
already
that.
had a relationship set up with Crestview Elementary in Henrico County. So Crestview was sponsored by Cobb Imprint for a fall read and a spring read with Virginia Reads One Book. Completely paid for by Cobb Imprint money.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew they do some backpack programs and stuff like that. I didn't know if there was any integration there.
So they're already doing they do the backpacks, I guess, for the children who are on free and reduced lunch, so that they take home food over the weekends,
Right.
that they might not be able to have. And so they already had that relationship there, and they said, we want to do more. Can't argue with that.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we also, as I said, the Virginia Bankers Association Education Foundation has been wonderful, helping us not only with grant money, but with reaching out to all the banks across the state to advertise our program. The Virginia Council on Economic Education writes all of our financial literacy. We know all about family literacy, but they really are the experts in financial literacy. So they wrote all of our curriculum for us to share with the schools, and they've actually been doing in-school professional development. In fact, one just happened 2 days ago at John B. Carey, where they had teachers from all over the city come and learn more about how to teach the financial literacy part of it. We've also gotten wonderful grants from, I have to mention, the Richard S. Reynolds Foundation, Herndon Foundation, SunTrust, Wells Fargo, lots of very generous folks helping us out.
That's awesome. It's a great little town, isn't it?
Wow. I grew up in Richmond, and it was great to grow up in, but when I was ready to leave, I couldn't wait to get out. And when it came time to start a family, I couldn't wait to get back. And it's really grown into its own since I've been back, and now it's really an exciting place to be.
It's definitely come into its own in the past decade.
Yeah, it's always been home, but now it's famous.
Yeah, I moved here in '89, so I'm kind of an adopted Richmonder, but I didn't grow up here.
Close enough.
Right. I think there's a lot of transplant type people that just get adopted. I'm one of them.
Yeah, we're happy to have you.
Well, that's it, Cathy. Anything else? Any other things you wanted to mention?
As I say, usually at the end of these, I think I've spoken every word in the English language at this point, so there's nothing left to say. I've said it all.
That's perfect. That's great. So really, that's all, folks. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and thank you for coming on the show, and look forward to your next programs with Read to Them, and everybody have a positive and productive day.
Thank you.
All right.